Interrupt us! Interlude us! Sparkles. I have come for you. Whoa. I'm just messing with you. Here, let me grab a chair pulled up. Sure, I could use a drink, buddy. Well, since I'm here for you, you could start by telling the story right. I think I'm doing just fine with my story. You said you were messing with me. Well, at the point you left off, Mardak is already dead. So, he's kind of irrelevant. Well, you're telling a story. Yeah, it's a good story. But Mardak is a lesson. It is a way to teach others how to deal with retired characters to make sure they never come back. And if you do this right, you might even get a short out of this. I knew you looked familiar. Focus. Now is not the time for a fourth wall break. You sure? You are not Deadpool. I know. Tell the story. Let the viewers know the status of all of the characters. Let them know, right? Or some of the future plot is not going to make sense. Like, why is the princess so important? Okay, fine, but you owe me an ale. Whatever. It's your money I'm spending. Well, suppose now that he's no longer part of the conversation. Okay, he's right. I am missing some important things. Kind of important. Mardak. Mardak was a difficult individual. I'll call him that. As a cleric, he was able to wear all sorts of armor. Unfortunately, he was also a paranoid cleric, which meant that he didn't ever want to take his armor off. Ever. And so that led to him, I'm gonna say, having his own aura that was not pleasant to smell.
Thou bird!
Stench? Of what speakest thou?
When the other adventurers mentioned this to him, he basically said no. I refuse to take my armor off.
Really?
When the adventurers decided, okay, we've had enough of this guy, we're just going to go ahead and let you go on about your own business. Fly, young cleric, be free. Be free to explore the world without us. And so he did. Now, they replaced him shortly after that with somebody that, I'm going to be completely honest, I have never been able to find what his name was. He was it was a race called the Elan, E-L-A-N, and they are psionically gifted, and he thought he was all that in a bag of chips. Okay? Yeah, he wasn't. So, he was going on about his business, doing all sorts of mean things and destroying all of the bad guys, which was nice, don't get me wrong. But the party traveled into the underground beneath High Pass, which I had mentioned before. Okay? The rulers of High Pass had told them where this princess could be found. So they went to find her, which was going through the underside of High Pass. They had to go through the keep, then travel down. They found out there were some goblins down there. These are very unusual goblins, okay? Like, when they took one of them out, they took his skull cap off, and he had extra eyes growing in the middle of his head. So, very unusual goblin. Well, they traveled down underneath his keep, took out a few goblins. It was no real challenge for him. But then they encountered an unusual creature. And this creature floated on its own. And it had things growing out of its head with eyeballs on the end of each eye. A couple of the players, and yeah, I'm switching to DM mode right now because I need to have this conversation. How do you deal with players that will metagame? Their instinct is to metagame. Well, you throw something at them that'll trigger their metagame mentality. And that's exactly what I did. Alright, switching off to DM mode now. And we're going to go back into the, story. So this creature floated up where the players could see it. And what it was is something called a Gauth. G-A-U-T-H. For scholars, they're referred to as beholder kin. Well, when the adventurers saw this thing, they assumed it was actually a beholder. So they ran away. Well, all except for this new adventurer, the Ellen, who made the mistake of thinking that he could take it on. He didn't. He got hit by its levitation beam, floated up. Gauth put it over the edge of this cliff and just let him go. The adventurer forgot about a magical pair of boots he was wearing, which would have given him the ability to feather fall. And so, down he went. Plat. All over the ground. So, there we are. Mardak's replacement eradicated. Okay? So, what did the adventurers do at that point? Well, they continued to travel through this underground area called Runny Eye. And, well, they took care of quite a bit of business. I don't remember each and everything that they did, but they took care of a bunch of problems. And then it exited out of Runny Eye, where they found the princess. Now, who is the princess, you ask? She is an unusual race called the Allurin. A-L-L-U-R-I-N. For anybody curious, feel free to look them up. Kind of a cool race. DM speaking here. It's a homebrew race that I found that is interesting. And attaches itself to an entire idea of, like, similar to tieflings, but rather than being descended from, like, the worst of demons, they're actually descended from succubus. So they've got all sorts of charisma bonuses, everything else. Alright, now, back to the story. So they meet the princess, who is... she looks, for the most part, like a human. Right? Except that she's got that supernatural appearance, that attractiveness that you can only expect out of a descended from a succubus. Very attractive, crazy high charisma, which is kind of fitting since she's a princess. Probably going to become a queen. That comes up later. So, princess, who has thick but bright red hair. Okay, think, what's her name? Think Merida. Okay, just red hair, poofy, curly everywhere. Alright, so, she is an Unlurin, but her alteration, I guess you could say, is that she has managed to break away from the demonic taint in her blood, and she is a good person. Right? She's a healer. She is a bard of some kind. It's an interesting combination, but a powerful one. And I will most definitely talk about her quite a bit more in the future. But this is where they find the princess, who is named Malrissa. Now, if you remember, there was somebody in previous videos that was rescued from a place that was controlled by a demon cult. They called herself, Mal. So now we've got Malrissa. I will tell you they're not the same person, but they are definitely connected. So, I don't want to go into too many more details about that right now, because we've got much more story to cover. Alright? But that is the fate of Mardak, as our friendly person mentioned. Now, there is another fate that I do have to mention here, because this person did not live to meet Malrissa. This person is Vonkill, who was the very short-lived replacement for that Ellen person. Okay? Vonkill was a Goliath. He was big, gray-skinned, beefy. Had a big sword. At the bottom of this area called Runny Eye, they had just finished defeating somebody who I guess you could say was the boss of the area. And the adventurers were taking a moment to go, okay, that wasn't so bad. We got that handled. And then they were all blasted with something. What was it? Well, it was a mind flayer. Blasted out his psionic cone of energy and stunned everybody there. But then, the mind flayer got greedy. Or should I say, hungry. And rather than just making sure that all of the other adventurers were handled, he went over and ate Von Kill's brain. Just tentacles went nom 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 nom. And then, in that amount of time that it took him to basically end Von Kill, other adventurers, not all of them, but some of them, started to come out of their stun. And so they were able to then attack the Mind Flayer. Now, if you don't know, Mind Flayers are not physically imposing. If you can get them into a melee fight, you're gonna win. Alright? But if they can stun you, like they did, and then have the opportunity, they're gonna eat your brain. And so here we say goodbye to the noble Von Kill. And then, after they took care of the Mind Flayer, they went and met the princess and all that kind of jazz. And then we're gonna pick up the story from there.